one of the things that a Harringtonian metaphysic helps us, so described, helps us to understand is that it's not just the case that transgenderism and transhumanism are conceptually complicit, but it also helps us to make sense of the way in which this sort of transhumanist logic makes it very difficult, very easy to think in terms of transnationalism as rootedness in a particular culture, rootedness in a particular nation or people or place or faith, as being wholly arbitrary, as something we should just be able to choose, mix and match, but effectively be emancipated from, that shouldn't really matter in any way at all. And so there's another kind of political front here to this logic, namely the question of what is it to be a people, what is it to be a nation, what is it to use the first person plural with respect to a political community.
Yeah, I think these are acutely sensitive questions. I mean, the idea that our body parts are interchangeable writ large looks like the idea that humans are interchangeable at scale, and that you can plonk any given human down anywhere in the world and they'll function equally well. You could graft a male genital member onto me, and that would just be it would function. I mean, the idea is grotesque to me, but to others apparently not. That the parts of a human body can be arranged like so much Lego. The idea that humans can be arranged sort of planetarily like so much Lego is
it's a kind of doctrine of fungibility.
Yes, and I think this is and again, you're going back to Heidegger. This is really it's his vision of the essence of technology as being about the ordering of everything as standing reserve. And I mean, if you look at the doctrine of human fungibility, this is just what the leftists like to call neoliberalism, which is the ideology which says human working populations should be maximally fungible and just present wherever they'll be most economically efficient. This is the reordering of humans as labouring units to the standing reserve,
which will always give an enormous advantage, is always enormous incentives for a placeless global villager elite that's constantly on the move.
Yeah.
But for David Goodhart's somewheres, for the 60% of our fellow Brits that live within 20 miles of where they lived when they were 14, this is simply an unintelligible. What do you mean? I don't even want to leave Yorkshire, let alone assume I can just be transplanted to Malaga or Malaysia.
And this is and what's so frustrating about trying to make the case, trying to explain the worldview of the latter to people for whom the former is perfectly reasonable, is that it's almost impossible to do because they're missing the garlic, they're missing the salt and the garlic, and they're simply refusing to acknowledge that salt and garlic are flavors. And
you could put anything in that, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. You could lob anything into that bolognese and it would be just as nice. So salt and garlic are not right. And I think
even to say that it's nice, or even to invite a consensus that bolognese that tastes one way is to be preferred to another way.
De gustibus non disputandum.
Absolutely.
Right. But it's specifically the refusal to see the axis of meaning and the axis of purpose. And I mean, meaning writ large, we're talking about the networks of human relationships within which life becomes meaningful. So your local community, the church that you go to on Sunday, the band that your husband is in, the kids that your child knows they can knock for and they'll always be welcome and they'll get a biscuit and a glass of squash and you can trust the mum. All of that stuff is intangible, and all of that is sort of bound up in the dimension of meaning, and all of that is just purely invisible to the ideology of maximum fungibility that sees humans as work units to be placed wherever they're most efficiently ordered to the market. I suppose I'm sort of skirting around the question of purpose, but I think if we sort of point loosely in the direction of human flourishing. I think this is a very extremely movable feast, and has over time meant a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But very few people would, including social science researchers, would dispute the fact that purpose for most people means means the act of being bound up in and obligated to those networks. Within a larger sort of accepted framework of, these are my people, this is my place, this is I know more or less what to expect, and I have enough, well above the do I have enough to eat and meaningful work. These networks of relationships. I suppose I'm sort of coming at this phenomenologically, because coming at it from the top down, you get very swiftly into highly politicized cans of worms. I mean, if you try to apply the idea of Aristotelian formal cause to a whole people, and you will very swiftly find yourself standing on sort of Hitler-shaped landmines. And this is and I should make it very, very clear that this is just not somewhere where I want to go. And I think this is very, again, it can feed in some demagogic directions and some genocidal ones, and this is emphatically not something that we should be looking to encourage.
Your critique is, I think, a lot more subtle than that. You're saying that really it's the elites that have forgotten that sense of form. It's the elites that are rootless, and that in fact it's it might be very easy to blame waves of migrants sweeping from Syria all across Europe, but in fact, it's very often might be migrant communities or the somewheres that David Goodhart describes that are least susceptible to forgetting their rootedness and their gods and their local loyalties and their families and their kinship groups.
I mean, I think elsewhere in one of my essays, I characterised the mindset that I'm talking about as the nomos of the airport.
And I take it the reference there is to Schmidt's nomos of the earth.
That's right.
Is that right? Okay,
well, I mean, it's very obliquely. But I
nomos meaning law, jurisdiction.
The law, the jurisdiction, the normativity, the sort of moral, the total moral reality picture of. Because this sort of came out of airports are one of my least favourite types of space on Earth. I think I may dislike them even more than I dislike shopping malls, but for very closely related reasons. Having spent after the book came out, I spent quite a lot of time in them, so ended up thinking about what is it about airports that I find so troubling. And in the course of those sort of musings, it came to me that sometimes these sort of silly Twitter aesthetic accounts you see, where they post pictures of a Gothic cathedral and they say, why don't we build things like this anymore? And it struck me sitting in some departure lounge rather. No, we absolutely do. We do build on that scale, and we do, and sometimes actually with that much architectural ambition. But they're not churches; they're airports. And then so I was sort of playing with the idea of the airport as a sort of cathedral for an entire sort of moral worldview, and thinking, no, actually the parallels are really there. There's a sort of there's an elaborate purification ritual that you go through before you're allowed into the inner sanctum, and the activity itself, which the airport performs, itself speaks to this kind of religious aspect of maximum fungibility, which is to say it expresses an idealized world in which everyone's always on their way somewhere. This is a space that isn't really real. It doesn't really
Instead
have time.
Of transcendence being made concrete, as in the great Gothic cathedrals, it's transience being made concrete.
Yes, exactly. And everyone sort of rubs along, because actually it's a very tightly controlled environment. And once you go into if you go into the inner sanctum, one of the first class lounges, you can leave. You could leave a Tiffany bracelet or a £5,000 laptop unattended while you go to the loo, or to go and get yourself another canapé, and it'll still be there when you get back because nobody needs to steal it. And it's a very tightly controlled environment. And yet you've never met these people before, and you'll probably never meet them again. And this is this sort of aspirational picture of the maximally fungible human world of total transience and total relationshiplessness. In a sense, it's a sort of architecture which enables purely disconnected co-presence without any need for mutual trust or shared moral frameworks or common purpose or any of the things which would be understood intuitively by us somewhere to be not only what gives life meaning but what gives it purpose and what makes it desirable to stay here rather than be anywhere else in the world.
And needless to say, as aspirational and impressive as airports can be architecturally, it is the architecture of anywhere, which is and that's very important. It's the architecture of nowhere.
Yeah.
You look at Cologne Cathedral, you know it's Cologne. You look at Milan Cathedral, you know it's Milan. Is there any airport in the world that you could look at, or airport lounge in the world you could look at and say, oh, that's London, that's Tokyo?
I mean, actually, it's like airport nerds will probably be in your comments saying, no, actually, there are some quite architecturally distinctive airports, and I think that's probably true. I mean, once you
for
get
the cognoscenti,
for airport lounges, I mean, they're sort of they vary a bit, but they the format's quite standard, I think.